Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sean, back again with another review for you. This time it's going to be on the series Hell on Wheels on AMC. Now, this is the 8th episode as of me recording this, and they're only going to have 2 more before the first season is going to be over. So I'm not going to go into the past 7 episodes. I would suggest if you have a Netflix account or Hulu or on demand, which will whatever television service provider you have, to watch it. It is a really good series. That way I won't have to spend too much time going into a lot of detail with this. I will do a quick rundown of the characters, predominantly dealing with this episode, just to kind of get you up to speed, and then we'll go ahead and break down this actual episode. First, you have Bohannon, the star of the show. He's a former soldier, practically looking for the person who raped and killed his wife. He's also dealing with the loss of his homeland, as he's labeled as a grayback. He also has his own struggles with just violence itself. Then it goes into Elam. Elam is an emancipated slave, still teetering back and forth upon that. You're saying I'm free, but you're still putting me in all these restrictions and not treating me equally. He also has his own personal struggles when it comes to being half white and half black. Then we talk about Doc. Doc is practically the main man who's running the railroad. He has his own political and personal reasons for how his character develops from both sides of the field. He also has a particular love interest that's causing a little twist. That's Lily. Now, Lily is the widow of the man who was working with Doc with papers that would help Doc go through the mountains with the railroad, this way helping him get through it faster. He would end up making more money. But she herself seems a bit torn. She's kind of around for her own personal reasons. Some of it seems to be for the railroad. They're kind of making it seem something maybe for Bohannon, maybe even a little bit for Doc. It's kind of up in the air. Then you have Joseph Blackmore. Now, he has a twist to himself that I think is very interesting to the storyline, because even though he's an Indian, who seems to be the major villains of this season, he's also a Christian. So not only is he an outcast from both areas, he's still trying to be almost like a peacekeeper. That, I think, has a lot of twist in itself. You then have to deal with Reverend Nathaniel Cole. He's definitely trying to help stop this war between the whites and the Indians. He's also, at least to a lot of extent, seemed very proud of Joseph and from him making that transition over. But then he starts to kind of go off his rocker after a while. Then you have the Swede. Now, the Swede is the head man of security, very direct type of guy, and he has his claws right into Bohannon. He knows that Bohannon is like a murderer, and he is setting out to try to prove it one way or the other. Hell on Wheels, Episode 8, Derailed. This actually starts off, surprisingly enough, with a derailed train that was done by the Indians. The Swede and Doc kind of have a powwow about Bohannon, because the Swede talked about previously how Elam was being strung up for having sex with the whore, and how Bohannon came in to the rescue, and how he's kind of like a fugitive to an extent. The Doc makes a very interesting point. He says, you wanted to hang a Negro for sleeping with a whore. And then the Swede kind of seems like, oh, well, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Lo and behold, Elam and Bohannon actually show up, and Bohannon actually starts to beat the Swede with some type of belt, and these bruises start popping up on his face. You can see Elam in the background just kind of smiling, and then Lily steps in. The Doc then kind of says, okay, look, I need you back at Hell on Wheels again, because they had left. The show then takes a slight turn and goes to deal with the Rev's daughter and Joseph Blackmore. They're actually in the camp where the people from the derailed train were being held, all the wounded. And there's a scene where she kind of clinches up to Black Moon because she sees this charred body. They do this close-up of where his hands are around her waist, and another close-up of where like her face is right in his chest. You can definitely tell they're trying to build something off of that. Then the Rev shows up. He seemed to have lost complete faith at this time. Seeing the body, seeing what's going on, almost seeming like an endless case. He's not sure what else to do. I also just think he's a little bit crazy by this time. The show then moves forward with Black Moon, the Doc, Bohannon, and the Soldier all in one of the trains talking about they need to find whoever did this. Because as much as even the Doc doesn't want all this altercation, he definitely tried in the past working with the Indians, he's seeing clearly that this is going to cost him more money and more lives when it's all said and done. The Soldier has a conflict working with Bohannon, as he is a grayback, as they call him, and also working with Black Moon, as he's an Indian. But when it's all said and done, the Doc makes it very clear to Bohannon that, hey, look, we need to find whoever did this and had them killed. Bohannon is still a little bit uneasy, so he actually goes in search for Elam, the only person that he states right now that he can clearly trust. So there's a particular thing that the Soldier says as all three of the guys are coming towards him on a horse. And he says, you have the grayback, the nigger, and the Indian. And I thought, yeah, well, you do. That's a pretty good setup. Sound like the bunch is all here. Now, what's also interesting about those three leaving is that they all have some type of love interest, if you want to look at it like that. Black Moon, of course, has the Rev's daughter. Then you have Elam, who has the whore. And then you have Bohannon, who has Lily. Now, Lily, in this case, after a particular conversation with Bohannon, decides she's going to leave the Doc's place. The Doc is not happy, as he feels like he's invested a lot of time, especially mentally, with the thought process of being with her further. And she's just going to step out. He actually makes her carry her own bags, which is funny in its own right. Then what is interesting is when she actually has a group of guys build her a tent, and he asks for the equivalent of 75 cents. And she didn't really seem to know how to pay him. This is already showing that I'm not sure she is as strong as she says she can be, because before she had the Doc, and then before then she had her husband. And even though she seems like a strong character, she still does not seem to be able to manage very well on her own, at least from what they show. You have the whore shows up out of nowhere, tells the guy, hey, look, just put it on my tab. We'll deal with it later. They're definitely starting to build that level of friendship. Like in one of the earlier episodes when Lily first showed up, the whore was the only one that actually tried to give Lily any bit of respect. All the rest of the ladies really didn't care for it. She also continues to have this downslide of everything. She's trying to put in her own floorboards so that she's not walking around in the mud all day, and she almost has like a breakdown. That part's pretty sad to watch. You then have the Doc quickly stopping by, and he leaves the actual wristwatch, pocket watch, that the husband had left on her, I guess, doorway entry into her tent. But then she also goes to the mess hall right in front with the whore, and everybody else has these almost dog bowls type of thing, and she brings this little tiny teacup, and they slush what looks like the equivalent of sloppy Joe and lasagna into it. And she starts to talk about how she's been having this dream about how the Indian feels like he's grabbing at her feet or at her ankles, and the whore tells her, it's very real. Don't let him take you. It's very bad, especially for this situation to happen, particularly when a white woman kills an Indian. The whore also goes and talked about her own past and how her parents got scalped right in front of her, and that her sister got raped and got her head bashed in, and how the guys who sold her off for like 3 blankets and a horse. I mean, it's just rough stuff all around. And of course, the Rev's daughter is not excluded from any of this. After the almost breakdown that the Rev had with seeing all the wounded people, the daughter visits him, and she sees there's a whiskey bottle. Now, he, of course, stopped drinking, so this kind of disheartens her, and she goes on this kind of rant about how she remembers when he used to beat her mother, and how she used to have these bruises, and how part of her where she feared him also still kind of loved him. He gets up abruptly and puts his hand to her face as if he's going to beat her, and she makes it very clear that she is not her mother. She is not afraid at all. Now, meanwhile, you have the Swede again trying to attack Bohannon as being a killer. He's on his hands and knees. He's moving around all these different papers. And the doc walks in and he says, you know, here, look at this, someplace over in Washington at the same time. And the doc, again, like, he doesn't care at all. But then what makes it even more interesting is that the doc then makes a comment about telling the Swede that he can walk all the way back to Sweden. Now, this is interesting not only because it is a threat, but it's also funny because the Swede secretly talks to himself, saying that, you know, he's Norwegian, he's from Norway. But it also just shows that the doc is starting to get a bit fed up with the Swede and his whole attack upon Bowman. Bowman still seems to be a very powerful person to the doc, and he's not willing to let that go. Now back to the main group. You have the soldier and Bohannon having a conversation about a particular battle that had happened. The soldier's going on about how it was a glorious and victory win, and Bohannon decides to kind of step up and say, well, no, it wasn't completely glorious. The area that was being held by the Greybags, or where Bohannon was actually at, was only passable because they had ran out of bullets and had to retreat. Other than that, they were taking down the Yankees left and right, and that the path that the soldier had to even cross over was over the bodies of these dead guys. This just helps to build more tension between them two since the very first interaction that they had. But with that, everything kind of dies down. Elam steps in, and next thing you know, morning arises, and they're awoken to all these screams. They come to find a guy has this huge slash up the right side of his body. His throat is slit, his eyes are gouged out, and his tongue is halfway ripped out of his mouth. At least it looked like his tongue. I'm just going to leave that there. On top of that, when they notice the body, they then go back and find out all their horses are gone. Makes it even more of an issue. And this helps to push the rift between the soldier and Bohannon even more, because now they have to decide, well, look, we need to go back. We can't go forward. Well, they don't really have a lot of time. They decide to push forward to the Indian camp anyway, and Black Moon kind of throws a twist on the things. To make sure that the women and the children are safe, he decides to kind of lead them around in a circle for a while. And unfortunately, by the time this is actually found out, they do reach the campsite and they do notice that they just missed him. The soldier is pissed. The soldier realized what Black Moon did, and that's when things reaches its breaking point. A kid, an Indian kid, comes back, apparently had no idea that the camp had already left. And that's when the soldier shoots him. Oh, everybody puts their weapons up. The soldier gets an arrow in the chest. Then all the Indians come out of nowhere. And that's when they close out with the ending scene of Bohannon shooting the gun. Now, this is definitely building up to be a very impactful season finale. I can't wait at all for this to end. So that's my review of Hell on Wheels, Episode 8, Derailed. Again, there's only 2 more episodes before the end of the series. Again, I'll suggest you do catch up with this. It's really good. Unfortunately, though, I do have to say, I do see why it started off at like 4 million views, and now it's down to like 2 million. The story is good for what it's worth. I do feel like they're taking some side things a bit too much. Like some of the extra characters, some of the ladies in there, they're not really building the storyline. I wish they were a bit more focused on the main characters. I feel like you can do a whole character or a whole storyline setup dealing with the railroad and the Indians by themselves. You don't need any extra distractions from that. But again, I'm going to stick with it. 2 more episodes out. I will continue to keep the reviews coming. My name is Sean Andrew with the TV Show Review. See ya.